No maid survived a day with the billionaire's triplets. Until the black woman arrived and did the unexpected. The moment she stepped into the Hawthorne estate, Ava Carter knew something was wrong. Not because of the shattered vase on the floor, or the trail of chocolate syrup down the hallway, or even the sound of 3 little boys screaming at the top of their lungs. It was the fear in their voices that caught her. The kind only kids carry when they've lost someone they loved too deeply, too young. "We don't need another nanny," one of them yelled. "We just want our mom back." 17 nannies had run from that house. But Ava didn't flinch. She didn't see spoiled children. She saw 3 boys trying to survive heartbreak the only way they knew how. Where are you watching from today? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the full story. You won't believe what happens next. The Hawthorne estate was the kind of place that felt cold even in summer. Marble floors. Polished chandeliers. Silent hallways where laughter once lived. Ava Carter stood in the foyer, clutching a tote bag with extra clothes, a first aid kit, and 2 storybooks she'd read so many times the spines were worn smooth. She heard the crash before she saw the cause. A crystal lamp toppled. A shoe print on the wall. A stuffed rabbit hanging from a chandelier. A tall, tired man appeared at the end of the hallway. His black button-up was perfectly pressed, but the dark circles under his eyes told another story. "Miss Carter?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she replied, smoothing her cardigan. "I'm Graham Hawthorne. I imagine Rebecca gave you the rundown." He nodded to his assistant, standing off to the side with a clipboard and a nervous smile. "She did," Ava said. 3 6-year-olds. Triplets. Recently lost their mother. 17 nannies quit in 6 months. I read between the lines. Graham ran a hand through his hair. "That's generous of you. I'm not here because I'm fearless, Mr. Hawthorne. I'm here because I know what fear in a child looks like." He blinked. "What do you mean?" But before she could answer, a high-pitched voice screamed from upstairs. "We said we don't want another one." Footsteps thundered down. 3 identical boys, tousled dark hair, freckled noses, and matching scowls, came charging into the foyer like a storm. Tommy, the tallest, held a toy sword. Jonah, slightly rounder, was wearing a superhero cape and no pants. Max, the smallest, had marker streaks down his cheeks like war paint. Tommy pointed the sword at Ava. "You'll be gone by lunch," Jonah added. "Last one didn't even make it to snack time." Max didn't speak. He just stared at Ava with wide, silent eyes. That silence told her more than words ever could. Rebecca started forward, flustered. "Boys." But Ava raised a hand. "It's all right." She crouched down, eye level. "Hi, I'm Ava. I brought snacks, a few games, and 2 stories I bet you haven't heard. Also, I can make paper planes that do backflips." The boys stared. "You're not scared of us?" Tommy asked, suspicious. "I've met scarier," she said lightly. "Who?" "Once, a 4-year-old set my shoelaces on fire because I asked him to eat a carrot." Jonah burst into a small laugh before clamping his mouth shut. Graham watched from the stairs, stunned. His sons hadn't laughed in weeks. "I'm not your mom," Ava continued, "and I'm not here to pretend to be. But I know what it feels like to miss someone so much that you start pushing everyone else away just to stop the hurt." Tommy's shoulders tensed. "You don't know what it's like." Ava stood. "You're right. I don't know everything about you. But I know pain. And I know grief. And I'm not going anywhere." The boys didn't respond. But they didn't scream again either. Graham exhaled quietly. "Would you like some coffee?" he asked her as the boys reluctantly shuffled back upstairs. "I'd love some," Ava said. "And you look like you could use one too." They moved to the kitchen. It was spotless. Too spotless. Ava could almost hear the absence of a woman's touch. The floral apron still hanging on the pantry hook. The ceramic cookie jar shaped like a sunflower. Signs of someone who used to make this house feel alive. She was the glue, Graham said suddenly, staring into his mug. Elena. My wife. The boys. His voice faltered. They were her world. Ava nodded. I'm sorry. When did it happen? 7 months ago. Hit and run. She was on her way to pick up birthday balloons for the boys. Ava didn't speak. There was nothing to say that could touch that kind of pain. I thought keeping them in the house would help, he continued. Familiar walls. Their beds. Their mother's things. But they started to unravel. One of them, Max, barely talks anymore. The school's calling weekly. I've run out of nannies, patience, and options. You haven't run out of hope, Ava said quietly. He looked at her. You posted that job. You're still trying. A moment of silence passed. I'll be honest, Graham said. If you decide to leave by the end of the day, I won't blame you. Ava smiled. Mr. Hawthorne, I've been through worse than 3 grieving 6-year-olds. Later that morning, Ava unpacked in the spare bedroom. It was simple, neat. The housekeeper had placed fresh towels by the bed. From the window, Ava could see the boys in the backyard. Tommy climbing a tree, Jonah kicking a soccer ball at the fence, Max just sitting on the swing. Watching. Waiting. By lunchtime, Ava had cleaned marker off 2 walls, refereed a pancake throwing contest, and discovered Max would speak only in whispers, if she hummed while he colored. But then, just as things were starting to feel manageable, Graham's phone rang. He frowned, picked up. Yes. His face changed instantly. What kind of article? A pause. Who leaked this? That's not true. No, I'll handle it. He hung up, face pale. What's wrong? Ava asked. There's a news story going out tonight, he said. Someone's leaked that 17 nannies have quit. They're painting the boys as unhinged. One headline says, Billionaire's demon triplets drive staff to the brink. Ava's stomach turned. They mentioned the new nanny. You. She didn't blink. I see. I'll understand if you want to leave. But she didn't answer him right away. Instead, she looked toward the window where the boys played. Let me talk to them first, she said. Graham blinked. You're not quitting. I just started, she said gently. And I told them I don't leave. And with that, Ava walked outside, leaving Graham standing in stunned silence. The news story was about to air, and Ava's name would be public. The world would soon see the boys as monsters. But would Ava stay once her past came to light? The evening settled in like a nervous breath. Ava sat cross-legged on the rug in the family room, surrounded by building blocks, sticker books, and 3 boys who were cautiously starting to lower their guard. Tommy was lining up action figures into battle formation. Jonah had one sock on and one off, drawing comic panels with a concentration that made Ava smile. Max, as usual, was closest to her, silently building a crooked tower with blocks, glancing at her every few minutes to make sure she was still there. Dinner had been calm. Graham had joined them at the table, something that hadn't happened in months. The boys were too surprised to act out. And Ava, calm as ever, had gotten them to pass salad bowls and say please like they'd done it every day of their lives. But now, as the clock neared 8 p.m., the air grew heavier. The news segment was about to air. Jonah flopped down beside Ava. Why do grown-ups always care what the TV says? Ava looked at him. Sometimes grown-ups forget that the truth isn't always what's on screen. Are they gonna show us? Tommy asked from the couch, arms crossed tight. Yes, Graham said quietly from the corner. They might say some unfair things. But I thought, maybe we should all watch it together. Max climbed into Ava's lap without a word. The room went quiet as the anchor's voice began. Tonight at 8, inside the walls of the Hawthorne estate, 17 nannies gone in 6 months. What's going on with the Billionaire's boys? A slick montage followed, blurred images of tantrums, shaky footage of broken windows, quotes from former employees calling the boys dangerous, wild, and emotionally unstable. Jonah's shoulders stiffened. Tommy's jaw clenched. Max buried his face in Ava's sweater. "I didn't break that lamp," Tommy whispered. "That was the dog." "They said we're monsters," Jonah added, voice small. Graham looked at Ava helplessly, his hands curling into fists. Ava turned off the TV. Then, softly, "Do you boys know what I see when I look at you?" 3 little faces turned toward her. "I see 3 brave kids who are hurting. I see boys who miss their mom and don't know how to say it without yelling. And I see kids who test people not because you're bad, but because you're scared they'll leave." Tommy blinked hard. "We didn't want to make her go away." "Your mama?" Ava asked. He nodded. "I know, sweetheart. But she didn't leave because of you. She left because something happened that no one could control. And it hurts. And that hurt doesn't mean you're bad. It means you loved her." Max finally whispered. "Will you leave?" Ava looked him straight in the eyes. "I've lived through hard things too, Max. And I'm still here. So no, I'm not leaving. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not until you ask me to." Jonah threw his arms around her first. Max followed. Then Tommy, the tough one, sat beside her and leaned his head on her shoulder. Graham sat back, quietly wiping his eyes. For the first time in months, he wasn't watching his sons fall apart. He was watching them heal. Later that night, after the boys were tucked into bed, Graham stood on the back porch with Ava, the night air cool and gentle. "They've never opened up like that," he said. "Not to me. Not to anyone." "They didn't need a disciplinarian," Ava replied. "They needed someone to sit beside their pain." Graham looked at her. "Do you ever wish you hadn't taken this job?" Ava chuckled softly. "I've had worse gigs. Once a toddler threw my phone in a fish tank because I wouldn't let him have marshmallows for dinner." Graham smiled. "I meant more. Do you worry that people will judge you for working here now?" Ava paused. "I used to worry about that kind of thing. But not anymore." "Why not?" "Because I grew up in the kind of place people already judged you for. I was a foster kid. Parents died when I was 6. Nobody wanted me for long. I know what it's like to be called broken before you even understand what broken means." Graham's gaze softened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Ava said. "That pain taught me how to recognize it in others. Especially in kids like yours." There was silence between them for a moment, then Graham said, I think I've been failing them." "You haven't," Ava said. "You've been grieving. But now it's time to start parenting again." He looked at her. "And I think you're ready," she added. Graham smiled, but there was hesitation in his eyes. "I'm afraid I don't know how anymore." Ava touched his arm lightly. "Start by showing up. Every day. That's all they really want." The next morning, the phones started ringing. The story had gone viral. News vans parked outside the estate. Commentators online were calling the boys everything from spoiled monsters to victims of bad parenting. Some were even naming Ava directly, pulling old records, past addresses, her foster background. Rebecca rushed into the kitchen, panicked. "Ava, your name is trending. Some outlets are saying you're unqualified." Ava calmly poured orange juice. "Let them talk. But this could damage your career." "I didn't come here for a career," Ava said. "I came for 3 boys who needed someone to fight for them." Just then, Tommy ran in with a homemade card. "I made this for you," he said, handing it over. The drawing showed a stick figure woman holding hands with 3 smiling boys. Above it, in crayon, "Miss Ava, our heart nanny." Ava blinked fast to keep the tears from spilling. "That's the only headline I care about," she said softly. But just when peace seemed possible, a visit from Child Protective Services would shake everything again. The knock came at 9:07 a.m. sharp. Ava opened the door to find a tall woman in a dark blazer, a clipboard in hand and a neutral expression on her face. "Good morning. I'm Mrs. Kendra Morales from Child Protective Services," she said. "I'm here regarding a series of complaints submitted after last night's news broadcast." Graham stepped forward, his voice low but controlled. "Of course. Come in." Ava glanced up the stairs. The boys were still finishing breakfast in their pajamas, giggling over cereal. She didn't want them to hear this. Not yet. Mrs. Morales stepped inside and surveyed the space with trained eyes. The house was clean. The boys' drawings hung on the fridge. Shoes lined up neatly by the mudroom door. But Ava could feel it, the weight of judgment floating in the air. "I'll need to speak with each child individually," Mrs. Morales said. "Observe their behavior, assess the environment, and document any risks." Ava nodded. "Would you like some tea while we get the boys ready?" Mrs. Morales blinked, surprised by the courtesy. "That would be appreciated." Within the hour, the boys had been dressed, calmed, and given the gentlest explanation possible. "There's a lady here who wants to make sure our house is safe," Ava told them. "Are we in trouble?" Jonah asked, frowning. "No," Ava said firmly. "But she might ask questions. And all I want is for you to tell the truth." Tommy was quiet, but then nodded. "Okay." Jonah followed with a quiet, "Yeah." Max simply clung to Ava's hand. One by one, Mrs. Morales spoke with the boys in the playroom. Ava sat in the hallway, her heart pounding with each passing minute. She could hear snippets. "Jonah, we made a castle for Mama." Tommy, "Miss Ava doesn't yell. She listens." Max, "We have snack time now. It's always the same." Then, silence. Ava leaned closer. Max again, "I was scared. But not now. Not with her." Ava pressed her hand to her chest. The smallest one had spoken. On his own. After the interviews, Mrs. Morales joined Graham and Ava in the kitchen. "The boys are surprising," she said, sitting at the table. "They're expressive. Honest. A little wild, sure, but they're grieving. It shows." Graham's jaw tightened. "So, what now?" "I'd like to stay the day," she replied. "Observe. Sit in on lunch, see how discipline is handled. Is that all right?" "Yes," Ava said immediately. "We welcome that." By noon, the boys were helping Ava roll out cookie dough. Mrs. Morales watched as Max carefully pressed cookie cutters into the dough. "You always cook with them?" she asked. "I find structure eases anxiety," Ava replied. "And it's hard to be angry when your hands smell like cinnamon." During lunch, Danny accidentally spilled his water. Ava handed him a towel. "It's okay, sweetheart. We clean up and move on. No yelling. No blame." Later, the boys showed Mrs. Morales their memory garden in the backyard, a tiny patch they'd planted with Ava. Each flower had a name tag, one for Mama, one for each memory, one even for the nanny who'd stayed the longest, before Ava. "We put love here," Jonah said. "So it doesn't disappear." Mrs. Morales didn't speak for a long moment. Then she turned to Ava. "How long have you been with them?" "Not even a full week," she answered. Mrs. Morales stared at her. "They speak of you like you've always been here." Ava swallowed. "Sometimes it doesn't take years to belong." The visit ended near sunset. Mrs. Morales gathered her things, paused at the door. "Mr. Hawthorne, you'll receive a formal report. But off the record," she looked back at Ava, "I don't think these boys are unsafe. I think they're in the middle of a rare kind of healing." "Thank you," Graham said. Mrs. Morales smiled softly. "I've been in this work for over 2 decades. I know when children are surviving. And I know when they're beginning to live again." She nodded toward the kitchen, where the boys were arguing over who got to frost the last cookie. They're alive again. That evening, Ava sat on the porch steps with a blanket around her shoulders. Graham joined her, a cup of tea in hand. I keep expecting something to go wrong, he admitted. Like we've been given this moment of peace. And it's all going to slip away again. Ava looked out at the yard where fireflies blinked in the dark. Grief does that. It makes joy feel borrowed. Graham nodded. I used to think I had to fix them. That if I just found the right person, the right school, the right structure, everything would go back to normal. There is no going back, Ava said gently. Only forward. And sometimes forward looks like making cookies and planting daisies in the dirt. He chuckled. Do you regret hiring me? She asked suddenly, softly. He turned to her. No. You came into our home and reminded us that love doesn't need to be earned. It just needs to be consistent. A long pause. Then Graham added, you didn't just reach them. You're reaching me too. Ava smiled, but said nothing. The door opened. Tommy peeked out. Miss Ava. Yes, baby. Will you read to us? You promised the pirate story. She stood. Of course. Have you ever known someone who healed a broken family just by showing up and staying when it was hardest? Share your thoughts below, we'd love to hear your stories. As Ava disappeared inside, Graham remained on the porch, staring up at the stars. For the first time since Elena's death, the house behind him didn't feel haunted. It felt like home. But just as hope began to bloom, a letter arrived the next morning that would threaten everything they'd rebuilt. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with gold trim and the words Hawthorne Family Trust stamped neatly at the top. Graham stared at it as if it were a ghost. Ava stood in the doorway, towel in hand from drying Max's hair after bath time. Everything okay? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened it and read in silence. As his eyes scanned the page, his expression changed, not to anger but something deeper. Shame. What is it? Ava asked, stepping closer. He handed her the letter. It was from his late wife's parents, the boy's maternal grandparents. It read, in part, given recent public attention and what we perceive as instability in your household, we intend to file for joint custody of the boys. We believe a neutral environment may serve their emotional well-being more suitably. Ava sat down. Are they serious? She asked quietly. Graham nodded, his voice hoarse. We've never had a good relationship. They blamed me for Elena's choices, and now this? I don't know if I can fight them without making the boys go through more pain. Ava read the letter again. She could already see the headlines. Custody battle erupts at Billionaire's estate. The boys didn't need that. Not now. But what they needed more than anything was stability and love. They're making judgments from 1,000 miles away, she said. They didn't see Jonah help Max with his reading this morning. They didn't see Tommy leave a cookie on your desk with a sticky note that said, "You did good today, Dad." They didn't see healing. Graham looked at her with something like admiration. You're right, he said. But how do I prove that? Ava's eyes sparkled with quiet resolve. Let them come. Let them see. 2 days later, Ava answered the door to find George and Lillian Whitmore standing stiffly on the porch, impeccably dressed, dignified, and visibly uncomfortable in the chaos of children's laughter echoing inside. We'll stay through the weekend, Lillian said. We've brought our attorney. Jonah peeked out from behind the staircase. Tommy was holding Max's hand behind him like a shield. Ava motioned gently for them to come out. Boys, she said, these are your grandparents. There was a pause, then Max stepped forward. We have new flowers in the garden. Wanna see? George blinked. Pardon. We planted them with Miss Ava, Jonah added. One's for Mama. George and Lillian exchanged glances. Then, slowly, Lillian nodded. Yes. We'd like that. The first day was awkward. Lillian tried to take over the kitchen, only to find the boys clinging to Ava's apron like barnacles. George offered strict tutoring time, which quickly dissolved into tears when Jonah misunderstood a math problem. By evening, the grandparents were tense, ready to write it all off as proof of disorder. But then they saw Ava, sitting in the living room, holding Max in her lap while softly explaining how pirates never abandon their ships, and neither do people who love each other. They watched Tommy curl up beside her and fall asleep mid-sentence. And they started to wonder, had they judged too soon? The next day, something remarkable happened. George walked into the backyard to find Jonah struggling to tie a swing knot. He hesitated, then crouched beside him. "You know," George said, "your mom used to tie the best knots. She taught me when she was just your age." Jonah looked up. "You knew my mom as a kid?" George smiled faintly. "She was fearless. Even climbed that tree once and got stuck for 2 hours. I had to call the fire department." Jonah laughed, a real, belly-deep laugh that Ava hadn't heard from him in weeks. And George laughed with him. Inside, Lillian watched from the window. Her face softened. That evening, over dinner, Lillian cleared her throat. "I'll admit, we came here expecting to find chaos, irresponsibility, a broken home." Graham's jaw tightened. "But," she continued, looking toward Ava, "we found a woman who's mended more than a house. She's mended hearts." Ava looked down, overcome. Lillian reached into her purse and pulled out the custody papers. Then, slowly, tore them in half. George placed his hand over hers. "We'd like to be a part of their lives, not take them away." The boys stared in wonder. "Does that mean, you'll visit and not move us away?" Tommy asked. "Yes, sweetheart," Lillian said. "You stay here. We'll come to you." Max climbed onto Ava's lap and whispered, "Told you you were magic." That night, after the boys were tucked in, Graham stepped out onto the patio where Ava sat beneath the stars again, tea in hand. "You changed everything," he said. Ava shrugged. "I just stayed." "No," Graham said. "You loved them like someone who never knew love until she gave it." Ava smiled, her voice soft. "Maybe because that's true." He reached into his pocket and handed her something small, a silver pendant. Inside was a tiny photo, Ava, with the boys, taken just days earlier. "I had it made," he said. "Thought you should know you belong here too." Ava's hand trembled slightly as she closed the locket. And for the first time in years, she let herself believe it. If you've been moved by this journey so far, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that restore faith in family, love, and quiet strength. Weeks passed. The house grew quieter, but warmer. Then one morning, the boys called Ava into the kitchen, giggling. "We have something for you," they shouted. Ava came down to the kitchen on a quiet Saturday morning, expecting nothing more than toast crumbs and spilled juice. Instead, the boys were lined up like little soldiers, grinning from ear to ear. "Sit down, Miss Ava." Jonah beamed. "We made something." Max handed her a folder. Inside was a crayon-colored certificate. "World's best mama, for loving us even when we were monsters." Ava covered her mouth, tears rising fast. Tommy added, "We talked to Daddy. He said, if you want, you can stay forever." She looked up to see Graham standing nearby, his eyes full. "We'd be lucky to have you," he said. Ava couldn't speak. She just pulled the boys into her arms. The weeks that followed were filled with joy and gentle routine. George and Lillian visited often now, sometimes even baking cookies alongside the boys. The house, once echoing with grief, now pulsed with laughter and life. Graham, once cold and buried in work, found himself lingering at bedtime stories, or joining Ava and the boys for backyard picnics. One evening, as twilight settled and the fireflies blinked across the lawn, Graham took Ava's hand. "You didn't just change this house," he said softly. "You saved it." Ava looked at the three boys chasing each other through the grass and whispered, "No, they saved me." Red Heart, if this story touched your heart, please tap that like thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments speech balloon, and subscribe bell for more gentle, powerful stories that honor love, family, and quiet strength.